Alrighty, guys, welcome to our week 8 live session. We have reached the 2/3 part of the course. Yeah, 12 weeks total, 8. Yeah, math is all right today. So welcome, guys. This week we are going to be going to the Middle East and the Mediterranean. Very interesting region. The food, like a lot of even just the geography of it, is very subjective because of just how much people have been through these regions. I'm gonna show you guys a video later on during the study hall, just showing you how many of these different regions have been conquered by so many different people, and just how the food and the culture and the people have traveled around. It's gonna be super fun, so make sure we stick around for that. In terms of housekeeping, there really isn't anything this week, so we can just talk about last week's assignment. So for week 7, we went ahead and did the tagine, the couscous, the chermoula, and the kefta. And from what I've been seeing, you guys have done an amazing job on those. I did see that a lot of people had some issues. They kept telling me in the narrative that their kefta was a little bit difficult to get to the skewers. And the reason for that is you guys are making them a little bit too chubby and just kind of putting them as little nubs at the tip of the skewer. You want to take up more of that surface area, make it a longer skewer or make it a longer piece of meat so that that weight is distributed. If you think about the stick and how thin it is, if you have all that weight concentrated at the tip, it's going to just kind of fall off, right? Just because of gravity. There also isn't much of a binder. Well, there isn't any binder in there other than the little bit of fat that's going to be in that meat. If some of you grab some of the leaner meat, like a 90-10 or something, then there's really nothing holding that together. So just do be mindful of that. But the chermoulas have looked beautiful. As we said with those, you're able to make them as chunky or as smooth as you would like. Some of you use them as kind of a dipping sauce. Others just threw it on top as kind of like a beautiful herb garnish, and that's fantastic as well. The tagines have looked awesome. The knife cuts on the onions, I have been very impressed with them. Very happy that we're finally getting down those beautiful knife cuts down. Most of the assignments that I've graded, for the most part, have just looked awesome. A lot of wonderful work. The preserved lemons were fantastic. The couscous, nice and fluffy couscous is what I've been seeing. So you guys have really taken your time with those. You're not checking up on it. You're not opening that lid often. Otherwise, it does get very, it kind of falls flat, and you're going to see that it looks a little bit more like oatmeal than it does just little individual grains. I think this week was an amazing week for the majority of people. So I'm looking forward to grading the rest of the assignments. Chef, anything that you've seen on your end?
No, same, pretty much same observations. Beautiful, fluffy couscous, which is awesome. As always, browning. Some people are still just a little shy with that, right? We talk about it every week, so I'm not going to say it anymore. I've been saying your feedback. Get that beautiful color on that chicken, right? It's going to help that presentation. Knife cuts have been improving. And then, yeah, just keep pushing because we're coming to that end, and just keep enjoying the flavors every week. I think I saw that the most was that it was this week kind of hit it like, wow, okay, what is going on out there? Because previous weeks, there's a lot of similarities, right? We've got beans and pork, right? Okay, that's similar. But now we're starting to head farther east, and you're going to see really different flavors start to shine through. And so I'm excited for the journey to continue for everybody.
Perfect. Yeah, I did notice that in the narratives as well. Everybody was super excited. They're like, wow, these flavors. The acidity was not overpowering. I'm like, fantastic. Everybody was scared of the lemons, but it looks like they figured out not to add too much of it, and just how a little bit goes a long way, and just that pop that you get from the acid in food. So let us continue on with this week's assignment. As I said, we are going to the Middle East and the Mediterranean. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys and just show you guys what we're going to be doing this week. So over here, we got some pita, we got some hummus, we got some of that beautiful shakshuka. Let's get into it here. So what are we going to do this week? This week, we're going to come to the live session. Those of you that are here, thank you as always for joining us. These things would not be the same without you guys. It would just be me and Chef Catherine talking to ourselves. And if that were the case, we would just kind of go all over the place. We're both not very organized when it comes to our brains up here. So we need you guys to keep us nice and structured. For those of you that are watching the archive, what's going on? Thank you guys so much. Any questions, always feel free to send them our way as you're watching these things. Make sure that you read and understand your research material. Complete both your knowledge and your conversion checks. Those are always going to be the easiest ways to post attendance. Wanted to go ahead and let you guys know, if you do go 2 weeks without posting attendance, you do get dropped from the program automatically. absolutely nothing me and Chef Catherine can do for you. So make sure that you're staying up to date with those quizzes. Review, understand your assignment. If you want to, you can create a production sheet. This is one of those weeks that we're going to be doing a couple of things at the same time. This is going to really test your multitasking skills. So if you need help with the production sheet, please let us know, and we will absolutely help you out with that. Make sure you purchase your mise en place. The sooner you can get that purchased, the quicker you can get those questions to us, and we can get that figured out before it's too late and we have to submit the assignment late. Get that assignment turned in, and if there's any assignments that you need opened up, please let us know. We're here to help you out. Just keep that communication, as we've always been saying. So let's go on with it here. So this week we're going to be making shakshuka, and we're going to be making a meze platter. So for the shakshuka, this recipe, the heat is really up to you. We're going to see right now that on the recipe it says you can use jalapenos, you can use serranos, whatever pepper you want to use, really your call. If you want to use bell peppers, which have no heat, that's perfectly fine. Generally speaking, serrano peppers are going to be a lot spicier than jalapenos, so take that into account when shopping. Both or either of them work. If you add both of them, they're going to add a little bit of a different flavor profile. If you can't find smoked paprika, sweet paprika will work perfectly fine. For the pita, try not to introduce too much flour to those pitas. As you work with it and roll out the dough, as it can dry it out and even start smoking in your oven. Another thing that you're going to see if you do add way too much flour to it is that it's going to dry out the surface, and you're going to start seeing a lot of cracks on your bread. We do want to avoid that. So with the meze platter, it's important to complete all three of the recipes. As we've said, this term we are doing everything. So this is something that is actually meant to be served together. So timing and multitasking are very important this week. If you can't get a hold of pitted olives, shoot for olives that are in oil or in a brine. And if all else fails and you can't find anything, whole canned olives will work perfectly fine. We should all be able to find those. Bulgur can be something that's a little bit tricky to find. Most grains will work for this assignment. Just make sure that your production is according to what grain you're using. Do not use rice or quinoa and try to cook it like the bulgur. You're going to end up with a very, very crunchy product, and you might hurt your teeth. So the hummus recipe this week is a little bit loose. So if you've gone to Target, Walmart, or if you've ever had hummus before and you've purchased it, normally you're going to see that it's a very thick hummus. The one on this recipe, it's a little bit more loose. It's going to be a little bit more liquidy. So if you want a thicker hummus, hold back on some of the liquid. Make sure that you're keeping that into account where you're going through the recipe. So let's get right into it here. So let's jump into these recipes. The shakshuka, what are we going to need? Olive oil, onions in a medium dice, small fennel bulb that has been thinly sliced. So what you're shooting for is just a very nice, beautiful, thin julienne there. With the serrano chilies, you can seed them and brunoise them. You can use jalapenos if you want something less spicy. And if you want something even less spicy than that, if you're like, you know what, spicy doesn't go well with my stomach, it hurts my mouth, whatever reason, go with just bell pepper. We do see here that there is all three of them though, right? Serranos, jalapenos, and green pepper. So what you want to do is just mix and match them as you will. But make sure that we have enough of it, right? So kind of take into account if you're using if you're using just only bell peppers, then you might want to shoot for two. That way we can take up that surface area that the jalapeno and the serrano would take up. And vice versa, if you want it to be super spicy, shoot for about 8 serranos or so. Bell peppers are pretty big, and jalapenos are about twice the size of a serrano. So just kind of take that into account. I'm going to need some salt, as always, as needed, some garlic that has been minced up, smoked paprika, as we said, sweet paprika will work perfectly fine. And then this week, you're going to want 14 to 16 ounces of canned diced tomatoes. Can we use fresh tomatoes? Yes, like we did talk about with the bolognese, but it's just one of those things. These already have that sugar that has developed nicely in them. For convenience sake, let's stick with the canned version here. It's just going to take a lot less cooking. To cook out that tomatoey, that acidic flavor, it takes such a long time. And we just kind of want to get right into the assignment. So 1/2 cup of water, 4 eggs, some parsley, and some feta cheese. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and heat our oil over a medium-high heat. Cook your fennel and your onions until translucent and tender. What does that mean? Somebody chime in terms of color. Oh, buddy.
Not brown.
Sorry?
Clear, not brown.
No color.
Clear.
Yeah, nice and clear, nice and translucent, absolutely no color. We're not making caramelized onions here. We're just getting that beautiful smell up in the air. After that, we're going to add the chilies, the bell pepper seasoned with a little bit of salt. Cook that until it's nice and tender. We're going to go ahead and add the garlic, add the paprika until nice and aromatic. Garlic is going to cook very quickly. That is why it always comes in later in recipes. You never want to throw in your onion and your garlic at the same time. Otherwise, you're going to get crispy onion and crispy garlic and undercooked onions. So after that, once we get that nice aromatic smell up into the air, this is another one of those weeks. I told some of you guys during your reviews, you can cook with your nose. Just add stuff until you get that smell and then go into the next item. So you get that beautiful smell of the onions and the fennel, add your peppers. Once you get that little bit of a pinch in the tip of your nose from the pepper smell, add your garlic, add the paprika. Once you feel that coming up in the air, add your tomatoes. Just really trust your instincts, trust your eyes, trust your senses. We're going to add everything here. Add the tomatoes, all the juices, add your water, simmer over a low heat until it thickens up. At that point, we're going to make sure that we reduce it down by at least 1/4. And then we're going to go ahead and make a little bit of an indentation with your spoon. So just if your product looks like this, just use your spoon, kind of spread it out a little bit so that when you add the egg, it sits in there inside of a little bit of a inverted dome, I guess. And your egg is just going to sit there nice and pretty. What that's going to do is that it's going to make it so that your egg doesn't run all over the place. In case the egg is a little bit older, you'll notice the whites actually just flow all over the place. We should have learned about that during our 122 class during the egg cookery week. So once we do go ahead and get all 4 of our eggs in there, you're going to make 4 little pockets. You're going to cover and you're going to cook over medium-low heat until your whites are firm and your yolks are still runny. Before we get the question, if you don't eat runny eggs, get the picture and then heat it up again and cook your eggs all the way through. So I know I'm still going to get the question, but I'm just going to throw it out there. And then at the end, you're just going to go ahead and sprinkle it with some parsley, with some feta, and then you're going to serve it immediately with the pita. This is another one of those things that you can just plate up in the vessel. It would come out like that, and you can just see all of it together. So kind of family style plating for this one. Any questions on the shakshuka here?
Chef, we did have one question come up in the chat regarding fennel size bulb. And so I just wanted to kind of touch point on first, if you're unsure of what fennel looks like, sometimes that can be one of those products that we look for in a grocery store or market and think, well, I don't even know what I'm looking for. So here is a quick visual of what fennel looks like. When they've got the tops cut off, it can almost look like an onion, and the tops themselves has a similarity to celery, right? So it's similar to both. However, the flavor profile is anise, all right, like dill. What you want to look for a small size bulb, probably somewhere between 3 to 4 inches long, 2 to 3 inches wide. If you can't find a small bulb, get whatever you can get your hands on. A little bit more is not going to hurt, and know that that actually all the fronds, I'm going to pull this up so we get a bigger visual. All of these are totally edible. They're gorgeous for making stocks. They're beautiful for doing sautés with, and the leaves and the fronds can be utilized as a garnish for flavor in a salad. So don't let that product go to waste. But yeah, you pretty much want to think about like a medium-sized onion would be your best comparison for a small-sized fennel bulb, and that should get it. The only other thing was I think that was it. And then just making sure that your tahini, the tahini brand that you do get out there are tons out there. They're gonna vary in flavor profile, oil content. However, you just want to make sure that their ingredients are just sesame seeds, and that way you know you're getting an actual full sesame seed product. All right, those were the only questions, but I do see. Okay, Eric has his hand up.
Go ahead, Eric.
Okay, hi. Yeah. Is this the recipe that calls for tahini?
No.
No, it's not. Oh, okay.
No, that's in the hummus recipe.
Oh, okay. And when we slice the fennel bulbs, how are we supposed to slice it? Like, what cut are we supposed to use when we slice them?
You can go for like a julienne, like you would an onion, like we did the onion for the what was the assignment we just did? The tagine. You want to kind of go for a very thin slice on that. It is a little bit more fibrous than an onion, so you don't want it to be too thick. Otherwise, you're going to get a massive crunch from it, and it's not going to cook down as much.
Okay, and then I'll just get this question out of the way for the tahini. When the cost for the tahini, I've actually made tahini before, so is that cool if we make it or yeah?
Mhm.
Okay.
Definitely okay. If you don't have, if you can't find tahini, you can get tahini seeds and puree the heck out of it. Essentially, what you're
Sesame
talking about
seeds.
is making a peanut butter, right? It's a seed butter, a nut butter. So it works. It's it's going to have a different texture and a different flavor profile because what the mills that they're using are industrial size. But you can get a fairly good end product by making it yourself. So definitely, if you can't get your hands on it, make it.
All right,
And
Crystal.
Crystal, yep, thanks, Chef.
The recipe doesn't specify what kind of pan to use. What would you use, a cast iron or just a non-stick, or what type of pan? Sorry, for the shashuka.
For the shakshuka, you can use a Dutch oven if you have it from any of the other recipes we've used, as long as you're using something that's about this big in terms of the depth to it. In a saute pan, it might just be a little bit too cluttered, and once you start simmering it, the liquid might boil over. So I would suggest using something that's just a little bit deep, maybe something that's about 3-4 inches deep. If you want to use a cast iron, that works perfectly fine. If you want to use a Dutch oven, that works as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Let's continue on here. Where is my Zoom? There it is. All right, so next recipe we have here is our hummus. This one, it's going to yield about 2 cups. So we are going to be using 1 can of chickpeas or garbanzo beans with a 1/4 cup of the reserved liquid. So do not open the can and just go straight to your sink and dump all that out. That is a lot of flavor that you're getting rid of. I have gotten the question, can we use dry garbanzos? I would suggest don't. Just for the simplicity of the recipe, let's go with the canned version. It's going to be a lot easier. Rehydrating them is going to take a lot longer. And unless you really get the hang of it down, you're going to have a very chunky hummus, and we do want to avoid that. So we're also going to need lemon juice. Fresh is obviously preferred. Some of you guys did get that lemon juice that came in your pantry kit. If you still have that and you don't have fresh lemons available, that works perfectly fine. We do have the tahini, which, as Chef said, it's just basically ground up sesame seeds. So if you can't find that, that'll work as well. If you want to make your own, like Eric said, but it should be readily available. We're going to need 2 cloves of garlic, which have been peeled and crushed, some salt to taste, olive oil as needed, and paprika as needed. The paprika is just going to be a garnish. So we're going to go ahead and drain the chickpeas. Make sure that you drain them into another cup. Do not throw that liquid away. Put your chickpeas into a blender or a food processor with a 1/4 cup of the reserved liquid. If you have a food processor, I would urge towards using that. Just because the surface area of it is going to be a little bit easier. If you do like a thicker hummus, on a blender, what ends up happening is it just kind of sticks to the side, and you have to continuously press it down to ensure that those garbanzos or those chickpeas have become completely emulsified. Otherwise, you do get a lot of specks of that. So just to be mindful of that. But again, if you don't have that, the blender is going to work perfectly fine. You're going to go ahead and blend just the chickpeas with the liquid into its semi-smooth. Without turning off your blender or your food processor. You're going to add your lemon juice through the hole at the top. And then if you need to, add a little bit of water to adjust the consistency. Once that keeps going, add your tahini, your garlic, your salt to taste. And then you're going to blend that into it is very smooth, so about 2 to 3 minutes. You do not want to see all these little freckles in there of the garbanzo. So make sure that we're letting that go for a good amount of time. Taste it, adjust the seasoning as needed. Once you do go ahead and get it out, garnish it with a little bit of olive oil over the top and some paprika. Do not drown this in olive oil, please. Just a little bit goes a long way. It's going to add a nice flavor to it, but you also don't want to see just like a giant cap of olive oil sitting at the top. So this one, a little bit of a straightforward recipe. The only thing, the tahini might be one of those ingredients that it might be a little bit more difficult to come by. I would definitely make my way towards like a Trader Joe's, or if you guys have those around, as Chef said, or anything like that that's going to sell anywhere that you might be able to get kind of like those funky cheeses. They'll probably have tahini as well. Any questions on the hummus? 3, 2, bye-bye. Alrighty, so let's go on to the tabbouleh. So for this, we're gonna need bulgur. which is another one of those grains that we've told you guys, look ahead as you can order it and have it for when you need it for the assignment. But if you can't find bulgur, you can use quinoa. You can use the couscous that we had last week. That'll work perfectly fine. It's not going to be the exact same, but really we're still going to be getting that technique that we're looking for with the tabbouleh. So just reach out to us, let us know. But again, if you're using anything that is not bulgur, this recipe right here is not going to work. Do not for the life of you set quinoa into a bowl and just let it sit there. It is not going to work. It's just going to stay crunchy. It's going to float around in that water. So for this, we're going to need bulgur, 1 cup of it. We're going to have fresh lemon juice as needed. So it's going to be to taste, right? 2 cups of water, 3 bunches of scallions trimmed and finely chopped. You're just going to go ahead and mince these guys up as much as you can. Remember, anytime you guys are cutting herbs, you want a nice seesaw motion. So make sure that your knife is kind of doing this as opposed to doing this. This is my baby monitor. It's what I watch my daughter while I work sometimes. But just nice fluid motion of your knife. Just this is what you're looking for, not this. All right, so you're going to go ahead and do the same thing to some parsley. 2 bunches is perfectly fine. It might seem like a lot, but at the end of the day, this is a parsley salad. So make sure that we have plenty of it. We don't want to see 80% grain and then like 10% herbs and then 10% tomatoes. We should see green predominantly in this. With this, I do think that the amount of scallions in this recipe might be a little bit much. It's what I've gotten from other students before. So if you want to use a little bit less scallions and more parsley, that is perfectly fine. It just really depends up to you. I'm not a huge fan of that oniony flavor. So I think it's a little bit overpowering, but again, it's really up to you here. And then chopped parsley, you're going to use 3 cups or 3 cups of it already chopped or just 2 bunches. Which is kind of how they come already wrapped up when you go to the grocery store. We're going to use a ripe tomato in a nice small dice. I do know that we struggled a little bit with dicing tomatoes during the salsas assignment for Mexico. So make sure that we are just cutting those tomatoes nice and small. I would suggest you can actually go ahead and the best way to cut, especially those edge pieces, once you do go ahead, your tomato is round, right? So you're going to kind of slice it like this. Once you have these edge pieces, cut it this way. So make sure that the skin is down so that when you cut with your knife, you're cutting through the soft side. If you're trying to cut through the waxy side, what ends up happening is if your knife isn't super sharp, it's just going to slide off and you're going to make basically ketchup on your cutting board. So just be mindful of that. We're going to use a 1/3 cup of olive oil, some salt to taste. I will get your question right now, Sharice. So what we're going to do with the bulgur is we're going to put it into a large glass or a ceramic bowl, and then we're going to stir 1 cup of the lemon juice and 2 cups of water. We're going to go ahead and cover that bowl, set it aside at room temperature until most of the liquid has been absorbed and the bulgur is nice and tender. That's going to take about 2 hours. The water that you're using, you want to use room temperature water. That's going to work best. It's just going to go ahead and sit there and rehydrate. Very similar to what we did with the couscous last week, just that the couscous was obviously heated. This one, it's kind of the same process where you just set it off the heat and it absorbs the liquid. So just be mindful of that. Make sure that, again, if you can't find if you can't find bulgur and you're using couscous, cook the couscous according to the couscous. If you're using quinoa, cook the quinoa according to how you would cook quinoa. Cannot state that enough. So once your bulgur is nice and tender, it should take about 2 hours. We're going to go ahead and drain any of that excess liquid and gently press it a little bit just to remove any of that excess water. We don't want this to be we don't want this to be wet. We want it to be a nice, beautiful, just salad, right? So we're going to go ahead and transfer our bulgur to a clean bowl. Add the scallions, add the parsley, add the tomatoes, add the olive oil, some lemon juice as needed. It shouldn't be super acidic. You should be able to get the acidity, but it shouldn't be like the tagine last week that was like, boom, acid. Nothing like that. And then we're going to go ahead and season with salt and then just kind of toss it all together until it comes together. I'll show you guys some pictures right now. Sharice, you had a question?
Yes, I did.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering, are we able to pick what we're doing, or we're doing all the recipes?
We're doing all the recipes this week.
Okay, just making sure.
Perfect. All right, so let me go into the marinated olives then. And once I finish up with these recipes, I'll go ahead and show you guys pictures so that you know exactly what it is that we're doing. But let's get into the olives here. So for this, we're going to need a 1/4 cup of extra virgin olive oil. 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar. If you don't have red wine vinegar, any other vinegar will work. Just going to change the flavor profile just a tiny bit, but not the biggest issue. 5 bay leaves, 2 garlic cloves that have been thinly sliced. You can just go ahead, peel your garlic, and just very thinly slice it. What we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be heating it up, just releasing the aromatics. So we don't want those pieces to be too big, otherwise the garlic's not gonna release that flavor. So we're gonna take the rind from 1 lemon. We can use the juice for the tabbouleh or for a different recipe, but basically just grab your peeler and take a lemon and just kind of peel at it. We're not gonna be zesting. We're going to be peeling the lemon itself. So we want to take off all those, all that beautiful yellow color. 1 tablespoon of thyme leaves, fresh is going to work best, or 1 teaspoon of dried. And this recipe here is a key example of what I've been telling you guys when it comes to the conversion for dry to fresh herbs. We see that the fresh version, we're going to use 1 tablespoon, and then the dry version, we're going to use 1 teaspoon, which is 1/3 of the fresh amount, right? So it's that kind of 3-to-1 ratio, depending on if you're going fresh to dry or dry to fresh. 1 teaspoon of rosemary, or a 1/3 teaspoon of the dried version. If you can find fresh, always shoot for the fresh ingredients. They're going to be a lot better. 1/2 teaspoon of fennel seeds, not to be confused with the fennel bulb. This is something completely different. And then we're going to be using 2 cups of olives, any type, black, green, or a mix. With the pits is going to be best. And as we talked about earlier during the live session, if you can't find these, then kind of shoot for the ones in the brine. Just make sure that you wash them off so that you can remove that brine flavor, and then we get our flavor into them. It's kind of what we want to do there. So with this, we're going to combine the olive oil, the vinegar, the bay leaves, the garlic in a small sauce pot, and heat just until warm. Key word here, warm. We do not want to ramp that heat up and boil this together. We don't want to get the garlic and the bay leaves all crispy, but it's going to be over very low heat. All we're doing is releasing the aromatics from all of these things that are in there. So you should see your garlic getting just a tad bit translucent. You should see the lemon rind kind of getting translucent as well, where the white part is. So again, very, very low heat for that. What we're going to do after that is remove it from the heat, stir in the lemon rind, the thyme, the rosemary, the fennel seeds, and place the olives in a wide mouth jar. A mason jar works perfectly fine. And then we're going to go ahead and pour the olive oil mixture on top of that and just kind of shake the jar all together so that it coats all of these olives. All we're doing is just kind of infusing the oil with all the flavors that we had, and then that oil is going to get absorbed by the olives. So we're kind of transferring flavor from the raw product into the oil, and then that oil is going to coat the olives. So at this point, we're going to refrigerate that for 2 hours or for up to 2 weeks. These will keep for a very long time. Shake the jar a few times throughout the day just to redistribute the seasoning. And that's pretty much it. That should be all you need to do for these guys. Pretty straightforward here. Again, just very key step here is to ensure that we do not have too much heat on these. You don't want to heat this up and then add it to your jar and have your jar blow up on you. Be very, very mindful with that. It's just until warm. You should be able to dip your hand in there still. So just want to make sure that we get that across. Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering. So, we're not using canned olives?
You should try to find an alternative olive. If you have to go to a canned olive, you can do that, but they don't tend to have the best texture. Ones that are jarred and in a brine or an olive oil, they're a lot firmer. You're gonna just get a better finished flavor profile. However, if you don't have access to that, yes, canned olives will do the trick. Just remember, they're gonna break down a little bit quicker than a fresher olive.
Okay, well, where do you get the ones that aren't in the can, or are they in a brine or whatever?
So some stores, oftentimes what you'll see at a lot of grocery stores, that they have the salad bar. You might also find the antipasto portion of the store, which is going to have usually about 3 or 4 different types of Kalamata, green or mixed olives, as well as artichokes in olive oil, peppers, things of that nature, cornichon, capers. So you can find that in one of those open salad bar things in the antipasto line. However, if you don't have access to that, or that's not at your local grocery store, you're just going to want to take a deeper look in the olive section. Again, it really depends. Depending upon the grocery stores that you're going to, you may or may not have as much diversity in olives, because we generally see canned black and green olives. but
Yeah.
but you'll find them in a glass jar. The ones in a glass jar are a bit better and fresher, in my opinion.
Oh, okay. Does Safeway sell the ones that we need to use, or?
Oh, a Safeway should have even the stuff that I'm talking about at that, like the salad bar. Safeway probably, depending upon the Safeway that you have, Safeway probably has one of those. And if
Yeah.
not, they definitely have it in the glass jar.
I know for sure I've seen them at Vaughn's as well, if you guys have those nearby. All right, so let me, I think we go right into the bread now, pita bread. So let me.
Jeff, we just have one question from Shelly before we hop into
Shelly,
that.
go ahead.
It says that we're supposed to have pits. What are we doing with the pits once we cook it down? Did we just keep it all in there?
Yeah, again, this is really about, so we're talking about texture, right? Freshness, firmness. Think about an olive, right? If we take that pit out, now we're exposing more surface area, right? It just starts to break down quicker. Keeping that whole olive intact with the pit, you're gonna have a better finished flavor profile. Also, that marinade is not gonna get stuck inside of that pit and become really extra. It's just gonna be a little bit more mellow.
Oh, okay. Well, you're smarter than me. So I didn't know. I was thinking, why do we need pitted olives? Or
You're all good.
Okay, thank you.
All righty, perfect. So let us jump right into the pita bread. So again, guys, we are doing all of these recipes. So for this, very simple ingredients here. So 300 grams of bread flour, 225 grams of water, 6 grams of dry yeast, 6 grams of olive oil, and 6 grams of salt. Notice that the salt is measured out for you and everything is in the same unit here. So make sure that your scale is set to grams when you use it, as that is very, very important. Make sure that you put your container first, tear it out, and then add your ingredients. You do not want to include the weight of your containers into your bread making ability here. So what we're going to do, combine all the ingredients, bring the dough together into a shaggy mess. Can anybody tell me what this method is called? We just did it recently.
Straight dough.
Straight dough method. Yes, Algie, thank you so much. So again, we're just going to go right into the straight dough method with this. We're going to allow this to rest for about 30 minutes. And then we're going to go ahead, give it a stretch and a fold. So you want to go do that envelope fold, right? So you stretch it out into kind of a rectangle, fold one half over, fold the other half over, and then just let it sit again. But this time we're going to go ahead and give it 2 more stretches and fold within the next hour. So make sure that you're aware of it. You do want to be sure to set 30-minute timers for this. So go ahead and get it done. Let it sit for 30 minutes. Get that first fold. Set a 30-minute timer again. Get that second fold. Another 30 minutes. That third fold in. So we do want to make sure that we're working the gluten with this here. After that, we're going to go ahead and scale these into 75-gram pieces. So you're going to go ahead and take your dough and just start measuring it out. Measure it out into as many pieces as you get. We're going to go ahead and shape it out into a little bit of a ball. And then we're going to let those rest for 5 minutes. After that, we're going to go ahead and roll these into 6-inch rounds that are about 1/4 inch in thickness. The best way to actually go ahead and roll out a dough into what's going to be the best way to get a circle, just because I know a lot of you are going to just kind of try to roll it out and just roll it in every single which way direction. But a little bit of a tip here for you guys is to have your dough like this, right? Let's say this is the part that's facing away from you. You want to go ahead and roll it out that way. You're going to pick your dough up, turn it 90 degrees, roll it out away from you again, pick your dough up, turn it another 90 degrees, roll it away from you again. You never turn your rolling pin, but you do turn your dough. What that's going to do is going to make it so that your dough is not sticking to your work surface. And by continuing this rounding motion of 90 degrees every single time, we continue to keep that circular shape, right? Which is what we're shooting for here. So just a little bit of information there for you guys on how to roll this out as round as possible. Otherwise, you get these very oblong pieces where you kind of just start rolling at it. Some parts end up thinner than others. This is going to ensure that that pressure stays nice and uniform on every single part of it. And then at this point, we should be going into about 6-inch rounds. So the pieces aren't all that big, right? We're going to place a sheet pan upside down on our convection oven for 375 to 400 degrees. Does anybody know why a sheet tray goes upside down? 3, 2, 1. All right, no problem. That's what we're here for. So the reason why you put the sheet tray upside down is because heat actually ends up warping metal. If your sheet tray is right side up, then it's going to warp a little bit this way. What that's going to do is that it's going to make your pita bread kind of do a little bit of a U shape, and we don't want that. We want to make sure that all of the surface area is being touched by the bread. So if your sheet tray warps a little bit this way, then your bread is still going to be touching because it's going to continue to warp because of the gravity downward. So it's very important that the sheet tray goes that way. Otherwise, once those pieces begin to cook off and your sheet tray does this, if it's the right way up, your pieces of bread along the edges might actually already be formed, and it's not going to be touching that surface. So it's very important that it goes upside down. What we're going to do after that is place the pita directly onto that pan or on a stone, and then we're going to bake it until it begins to turn a nice golden brown color. Once finished baking, place the pita into a bowl with a towel to allow for some steaming and to prevent the pita from getting hard. So really all we're doing is just cooking it till it's a nice golden brown color. There's no flipping or anything. Sorry, there's no flipping or anything like that on this. We're just going to go ahead and set it, let it turn that beautiful color that we're looking for, and then pop it out. Any questions on bread making?
Chef, we did have a few questions regarding the yeast in regards to active yeast versus instant yeast compared to dry active yeast. The recipe does call for dry yeast, but it doesn't have a blooming stage. So trying to figure out if we've had this discussion before, right? With the focaccia versus active versus instant versus active dry. Based on the recipe, I would say that since it's dry, it's dry active yeast, not instant yeast.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, definitely bloom the yeast beforehand. Yeah, so before step one, let's call it step half. Step 0, grab a little bit of the water with your yeast and make sure that you bloom it for about 5-6 minutes or so. You should be able to start seeing that bubbling at the top of the water. Just because, yeah, you're right, that is dry yeast as opposed to instant. So.
And then one other thing, there was a request to find out what a pita looks like. So I'm just going to pull that up for you all. And I think there was one other question in the chat. Just pull that up. From Crystal, but let me get this image pulled up and then you can see this. Pita bread does take a different shape and form depending upon where you're located, the style of oven that you have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But really it is, it's gonna be puffed up. You're gonna have a center that's hollow. It shouldn't be too thick or too thin. Honestly, when I think of pita, this is really solid looking pita right here. That would be, my suggestion. You're going to see that it can puff up a lot like that when you're right in the oven because that heat and steam is expanding. But that's what you're looking for, right? It shouldn't be too thick and it should not be thick and doughy. And like this is a bit thick and doughy. And these are pretty thin. But at the end of the day, this is all pita, right? These are all pita bands. Just like we know that there's going to be variations. That'll happen, but you're going to want to aim for those ones that I kind of picked up for with that action and looking like that, about that same size shape and a little bit of color development. You don't want it to be pale white. That means we haven't gotten that nice nutty notes from the flour and it's going to taste like raw flour. All right. Crystal.
Is it better to use a pizza stone or a sheet pan?
Most likely in industry kitchens, you're going to be using sheet pans if you're making pita. So I would say use a sheet pan, but you could also do 2 batches and get that, 2 set your oven, 2 racks in there, do one on a pizza on a pizza stone and do one with the sheet pan.
Thank you.
Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, the sheet pan that we use, it doesn't need to be greased or nothing like that, does it?
Nope. All right, so let me share my screen with you guys for the last time here and just show you guys some stuff here. So these are old assignments from students. As Chef was saying, the pita should be hollow at the center. So this is exactly what you're looking for here. You can see that it's a beautiful dough, but it's not super doughy. It creates this beautiful pocket on the inside. Your shakshuka before adding your hummus and stuff should look like this. We can see that this one looks like it's done inside of kind of like a very tall saute pan. So again, just take a look at how much liquid is in here, right? So this is one of those things that you have to take into account. Make sure that you're not using a very thin like egg pan or anything like that. We want it to have a little bit more height to it. And the egg should be nice and runny like this one over here. In terms of the meze, they have this here, the olives, the tabbouleh, the hummus, and that pita, again, nice and hollow on the inside. This person decided they were going to do pita chips, which is perfectly fine as well. And then again, a little bit of a meze over here with some fresh peppers, got some olive oil, the olives, the tabbouleh. And then take a look at this one over here. Just beautiful stuff here, right? So we do want to make sure that this is kind of what we turn in at the end of the day. It's not just for individual pictures. I do want to make sure that we turn in something that will go out to a table like an appetizer. Take a look at this one over here. This one's got all kinds of stuff, some feta, some cucumbers, some olives, that beautiful bread, some tomatoes, it looks like. We're going to be talking about these very shortly, as well as the hummus over here. So it's kind of what you're shooting for. It looks like we got a couple of questions. I think we're going to hold off on the questions until the end of the live session. We do want to get right into the history and stuff. We have ran a little bit long because there is quite a few recipes this week. So if that's okay, we're just going to jump right into it here. So this week, where are we going in terms of the map? Where are we headed? So we are headed to the Middle East and the Mediterranean. Let me move some stuff around very quickly because I have things all over the place. So I'm going to share this screen over here, actually. Wait, this one. There we go. So let me slide some stuff over here so that I can see you guys. This week we are going to the Mediterranean and the Middle East. So what is the Mediterranean? It's one of those things that, again, like I told you guys, it's a little bit subjective. Basically, anything that touches the Mediterranean Sea can be considered part of the Mediterranean region. But ideally, what you're going to have is this kind of region right over here, right? Let me see this one over here. Yeah, so it really what you're going to consider it is kind of this right here. And then once you get into Turkey and these guys over here is what you're going to consider the Middle East. So if we take a look at the Middle East picture, we have Iran, Syria, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, these kind of regions. And then we can see right over here, this is right next to Africa, right? So it's right across that Red Sea. So this is a region that has had quite a bit of conquering done by every region that you can find over here: Spain, France, Italy, Africa. They've all just kind of been around each other's neighborhood quite a bit. So we're going to see that the food ends up being very similar in a lot of these regions. Not only the food, the culture, the religion, we'll see all that kind of stuff. We saw it a little bit in Africa where the influence from India over on the east side of Africa is super, super prevalent. So the population of the Middle East, which is actually this picture over here, is 411 million people. The Middle East, it's very loosely defined, but generally consists of Egypt, Iraq, Iran, Israel, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Turkey, United Arab Emirates, and Yemen are basically what you would consider that there. Historically, this area is very, very dry and sees very little rainfall throughout the year, which can make growing food very tricky. However, these people still do not starve. Barley, pistachio, figs, pomegranates can be found growing in this region, as well as a lot of other stuff. But as we've gone through these other cultures in different regions, different countries, no matter the climate, the people triumph. And that's what's super fascinating about it. They make do with what they got. This place sees almost zero rain throughout the year, but they're not dehydrating. They're finding other sources of water, which is always super fun to me. One of the things that you're going to find in both the Middle East and the Mediterranean, and as we continue on into Asia, is religion. Religion is one of these things that it is super huge. There's a lot of religions in this area, but what you're mostly going to see is Muslim. There's also a little bit of Christianity, a little bit of Judaism, some Hinduism. Religion has had a huge influence in the culinary world in this area. seeing as religion dictates what they can eat, what they can't eat, at what time they can eat, basically. So it not only dictates what they can, when they can eat, but how they eat as well. So that's something that's super crazy to me. Just because I stuff my face all day, every day, and I don't have to worry about fasting or basically any type of dietary restrictions. I eat everything. But there's something called the Sharia law in this region, which is a code of conduct that is very strict, for all aspects of Muslim life. Sharia law is Islam's legal system. What it translates to is the clear, well-trodden path to water. So basically to salvation, right? This is one of those regions that, as we talked about, does not have much water in it. So that's kind of like the holy ground, right? The water. The countries that use the Sharia law for their legal system are Pakistan, Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, Sudan, and Yemen. All other Islamic countries in this region use Sharia law for personal matters. But they don't have it as like their law, like what we have here in the US, right? We have our own laws. These people use the Sharia law as their legal system. And then these other countries, not so much. It's just more of a moral guideline. A lot of us are familiar with a lot of these countries. They kind of became a household name in the early 2000s, right? Here in the US, we did have the Twin Towers that went down. We have a lot of veterans that are now in the culinary industry. So some of you might have even been out there. So those of you that have, thank you for your service. Really, from the bottom of my heart, it's something that
You're welcome.
Something that I personally would not be able to do. But for those of you that do go, thank you so much. So in terms of the laws here, right? So very strict. They don't eat pork. So unfortunately for them, fortunately for me, because there's more for me, they don't eat any bacon. They don't eat any lard. Pork is considered to be a very dirty and unclean animal. So they also do not eat with their left hand. Chef touched on this last week. So only from the right, even if you're left-handed, you do not eat with your left hand. Your left hand is considered to be your dirty hand, and that's the one that you clean your over there with. So do be mindful of that. That's the booty hand. In extreme Sharia or extreme Islam, women don't have the same power as men. So women do not eat with the men. Women will eat at a different table with the kids, or they eat after the men. A few years ago, actually, you had the first woman getting their driver's license in Saudi Arabia. So while it is progressing, it's not at any significant rate like what we have in all of these other Western countries, right? Religion has influence on cuisine in every single part of the world. From, as I said, from when food's consumed to what kind of foods are eating, what kind of foods are forbidden. And this is something that I do want to make sure that you guys take away from this live session. It's important to understand how religion can affect cuisine for many reasons. Understanding and respecting the cultures is important no matter the industry that you're in, but especially for us in the food industry. Understanding and respecting the different cultural influences, it plays a role in a successful business and the return of guests. So most, if not all, major religions in the world have some form of dietary restriction. So people of the Catholic faith do not eat meat during Lent. Those of you that are familiar with McDonald's, that's when the fish fillet kind of comes back every single year, is during that Lent time. So it's one of those things that even McDonald's is taking dietary restrictions into account. The majority of people here in the US are probably going to be Catholic. Or do celebrate, or not celebrate, but do take part in Lent. And that's one of those things. Fish is something that skyrockets during that Lent time. Hinduism prohibits active killing and eating of any animal or plant, and instead requires waiting for fruit to fall off from the vine or for an animal's life to just naturally end before they consume it. Islamic faith prohibits any type of alcohol consumption. Judaism requires that food be kept kosher. So as a chef, it's very important to understand the demographic, where you will be cooking and what needs your guest might have during certain times of the year. So even if you don't partake in that religion or anything like that, you still need to be very mindful of that. You do not want to make a beautiful pork braise for somebody from Islamic background, right? It would be catastrophic. It would be pretty much the end of the world for them. So we do have to be very, very mindful of that. So just completely understand that. And it's one of those things that you need to take into account, if for those of you that plan on opening a restaurant or anything like that, be aware of your demographic. Know what type of food you're going to be serving to the people that are around you. You're not going to go into a low income neighborhood or something like that and make a fine dining restaurant and start charging $30, $40 a plate. Like it's just not going to work out for you. And vice versa. You can't have a super, a restaurant that only sells beef products and be around a Catholic neighborhood and then see that your sales just go completely down during that Lent period. So just one thing that I want you guys to take away from this live session is be very mindful of everybody that you're cooking for. As again, it can pretty much be end of the world situation for some people if they do consume something that they're not supposed to. But as we do go into some of the ingredients from this region, Baharat, which is a spice mixture of black peppercorns, coriander, cumin, allspice, cardamom, cinnamon, cloves, paprika, and nutmeg. It's like the all-purpose seasoning used here. It's used to season lamb, fish, chicken, beef, soups. It's even used as a condiment at the table. So very similar to the Indian version, which is called garam masala. We saw one in Africa last week. So this region here, Africa, India, from next week, these are all regions with giant, huge emphasis on spices. You're going to see a lot of spices being used here. And the reason for that, we have to think about it as what we've talked about almost every single week so far, right? The spice trade that went on here from Asia to India to the rest of Europe. Spices have been transferred left and right. And also just the type of food that's being eaten. A lot of these places are going to be eating food that's a lot more gamier than what we might be used to here. So you need to kind of cut down on that, and using a lot of spices to kill that gaminess is what's going to give you a lot of beautiful food. Other main ingredients here include bulgur, which we're using this week, saffron, which we used during the week 6 assignment, yogurt. Yogurt is something that tones down a lot of that spiciness or a lot of the spices and just bold flavors. That creamy yogurt flavor is going to kind of tone that down. So again, you're going to see a lot of gamey foods with spices being used to mask that gaminess, and then yogurt being used to kill off the spiciness or the spices from having to mask the gaminess. So it's kind of just a play on a play on a play on the food, right? But again, development of flavor. You're getting all of these things in a very toned down fashion, and it just all comes together very beautifully. So another thing that you're going to see here, chickpeas, dried limes, oregano, cardamom, lots of lamb, lots of tahini, which is the toasted sesame paste that we're using this week, orange water, and rose water. What is that? So both of these are things that are very, very strong in terms of flavor. It's just infused liquids, essentially. I've actually used both of these before. I've used them to make an orange blossom panna cotta and a rose water panna cotta. Really, a little bit goes a long way. And the reason why you use it in a panna cotta or like a dairy type dish is to just balance out that strong flavor. If you've ever been into a lemon, an orange rind before, it's very overpowering. So just getting that beautiful just infusion of flavor, getting that sugar and the dairy to tone that down really gives you this fantastic thing. And the reason why they use rose water is it's known to have anti-inflammatory and antibacterial properties. So we're going to start getting into that once we head into the Asian region, where food is medicine. So we'll leave that for then. Another thing that is eaten a lot in this region is mutton. Does anybody know what mutton is?
Lamb.
Lamb, correct. It is lamb that is over 1 year old. So a rack of lamb at a fine dining place is probably going to come from a lamb that's about 6 months old. It's going to be nice and tender. It's not going to be super gamey or overpowering. As the lamb get older, they do develop this funk, as I like to call it, or the gaminess. I'm not a huge fan of it personally. I like it the way these people make it, where they throw a bunch of spices onto it to kind of cut it down, and you can taste it just a little bit. Yeah, so you're going to see that the way they decided to control that gaminess, as we said earlier, is just by adding a lot of spices to it to make sure that it's not so overpowering. If you guys have ever had lamb, or even if you've ever been around where they're cooking lamb, that smell in the air is very interesting. It's very different than when pork is being cooked or beef is being cooked. You're like, huh, what is going on over there? Something going bad? But yeah, over time, and due to this area being a very popular route between Europe and Asia, many other influences have affected the cuisine of this region. You can find dumplings from the Mongol invaders, turmeric, cumin, garlic, other spices that came from India, cloves and peppercorns and allspice that came from the Spice Island, okra from Africa, tomatoes from the New World. So all kinds of stuff in this region. And again, we're using tomatoes this week. So if you look back at the map, we're pretty much all the way over here now, and we're still using tomatoes that came from the other side of the world, right? So that's super interesting. In terms of famous dishes from this region, hummus, which we're making this week, which is right over here. And this is what I was talking about. Just a little bit of olive oil goes a long way. Halloumi cheese, which is one of the most amazing things in the world. And just take a look at this here. They have cheese on a grill and it's not melting. So halloumi cheese is a goat or a sheep's milk cheese with a high melting point. So it makes it great for grilling. It's very similar to what you might see in India, which is a paneer cheese, panela cheese that comes from Mexico. These are cheeses that you can throw onto a grill and they're going to get this beautiful sear on the outside. And they're amazing, and they're actually used a lot in kind of like as a meat substitute for a lot of dishes. So you'll see halloumi, paneer, panela cheeses being used. Another thing that we're doing this week is the tabbouleh, which is a parsley salad with bulgur or couscous. Typically has tomatoes, lemon, fresh herbs, lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of parsley, some olive oil in it to just give you that beautiful creamy mouthfeel. Baba ganoush. Does anybody know what baba ganoush is?
Eggplant.
Eggplant, yes, sir. So it looks exactly like hummus pretty much, but it's actually made with eggplant. So what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and you're going to bake or cook off. Usually I grill it so that I can get that beautiful smoky flavor onto it. And then you're just going to go ahead and blend it exactly like you would the chickpeas, make it the exact same way, but it's actually eggplant based as opposed to chickpea based. We have, I don't know how to pronounce this one. I think it's manakish, if I'm not mistaken, which is a flatbread. Where did it go? Here it is, over here. So it's a flatbread, and it's what's considered to be the first version of a pizza. So you think pizza, you're like Italy. Well, maybe. Again, a lot of these things are super subjective. They've kind of been lost to history. So these people are going to absolutely claim that they're the ones that invented pizza. Italy's going to be like, it was us. Just like when you get to the Americas, you have ceviche, which is something that Mexicans are going to be like, that was us. And the Peruvians are going to be like, that was us. So again, things that have been lost in history, just similar foods in different regions that we don't know where they originated from. So we just kind of roll with it. Shawarma, which is a standing rotisserie, mostly used to cook lamb, which is, I do have two pictures of it, which is this one here. So this is something that we've seen before, right? When we went to Mexico, we talked about tacos that are made from a very similar meat. Does anybody remember the name of that meat? It was tacos al pastor, which is actually right over here. So if you look at this guy, he's doing the exact same thing that that other guy is doing on the other side of the world here. And the guy looks, actually they look pretty similar, but we can see that it's kind of the same thing. It's a spit roast with a bunch of meat on it and then a flat top on the bottom of it, just kind of some direct heat. But the reason why this is all the way in Mexico is because of the Lebanese immigrants that ended up there. So just couple of people that traveled to the New World, and it became it's Mexican tradition now. Tacos al pastor are something that you'll see everywhere, and Mexico will always be associated with it. But it came all the way from the Middle East. Another thing that we're going to see, dolma. I am not a fan of these things at all. Chef Catherine says thumbs up.
Yeah,
but
chef. Yeah, chef. They're great. They're great.
These are a stuffed vine leaf, which are found in Greece, Egypt, the Levant region, which is Israel, Lebanon, and Syria. And according to the country and the region, they might be stuffed with a couple of different things, but basically they're stuffed vine leaves that can either be served warm or those prepared with olive oil can be served cold alongside a garlic yogurt dip. But again, one of these things that we see it in all these different regions. Egypt, Greece, Israel, Lebanon, Syria, all of them are going to tell you that they invented it. But again, one of these things that we just don't know. They might have a little bit of a different name in some regions, but at the end of the day, it's still kind of this exact same dish. I'm not a fan of them, honestly, but we move on to baklava, another one of these things that this one's good. I love this one. So this one, it's traditionally regarded as a Levantine or Middle Eastern dish. However, it's also a very popular traditional dessert in both Greece and Turkey. So again, one of these things that if we take a look at the map, it's just regions that are relatively far away from each other are going to tell you that they're where it came from. But as I told you guys, I'm going to show you guys a video right now. We're going to see why there's this massive mess in this region over here, where nobody really knows where what's coming from, right? And then kebabs, which is the most famous street food in this region. We did make a version of them last week. Basically, or do I have a picture of those? I do. Yep, I do. So just meat and veggies and stuff kind of skewered and grilled off. It's typically what you're going to see with kebabs. And then the importance of pickles in Middle Eastern cuisine is something that you're going to see a lot. So food is always served with olives or pickles to help with digestion. We do still have a lot more information, and we're going to cover the Mediterranean cuisine as well right now. But we're going to put an end to this live session for now. We did take a little bit longer during the assignment portion, but it is one of those things that we do want to make sure that we cover, as that is kind of the main thing that we're getting graded on, right? So remember, guys, assignment is due Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. CST. We're going to go ahead and call the live session here, but we're going to jump right into the study hall, and we're going to continue on with the history as well as a little bit more of the etiquette that they got in this region. We all set for study hall? Oh.